February 28th, 2026. That's the date. The day a shadow war that had been simmering for decades finally and violently broke out into the open.
So what happened? Well, in the dead of night, the skies over Iran lit up. It was a joint U.S.-Israeli campaign. They called it Operation Epic Fury. And let's be clear, this was no simple warning shot. This was a massive, all-out assault targeting the absolute core of the Iranian regime.
So that's what we're here to do. We're going to break down the anatomy of this conflict.
The big question on everyone's mind is how? How did we get here? How did this undeclared, simmering conflict between the U.S. and Iran just boil over into an all-out war? Well, to really get it, you got to rewind the clock.
And I mean, we have to go way back. The roots of this thing, the real seeds of this war, were planted more than 70 years ago. That's where all the mistrust and hostility really started.
It really kicks off in 1953 with that CIA-backed coup. For a lot of Iranians, that event just solidified the U.S. in their minds as this meddling imperialist power. Then, bam, 1979, the Islamic Revolution completely flips the script. Suddenly, America is the great Satan. You fast forward to our time, 2018, and the U.S. pulls out of the Iran nuclear deal, and that just unleashes a whole new set of problems. The final step, the last major move before the war itself, was in June 2025, when the U.S. actually launched strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. When you look at it all laid out like this, it's not just a list of dates, right? It's a clear cycle of action and reaction that just kept building until it couldn't be stopped.
And that brings us right to the first huge driver of this war, Iran's race to get a nuclear bomb.
So once the U.S. was out of that nuclear deal, Tehran just went for it. They threw off all the old restrictions, and the speed was just breathtaking. I mean, look at this. By February 2024, they had enough enriched uranium to build a bomb in under 2 weeks. Just a few months later, by October, they had enough for several bombs. And then, the big one, by January 2026, sources were saying they'd crossed that critical 90% weapons-grade threshold. The policy of containment? It was officially dead.
And this idea of breakout time, that's the whole ballgame for U.S. and Israeli military planners. It's the time it takes to go from we have the material to we have a bomb. By early 2026, that time was essentially zero. For them, that was the ultimate red line, and Iran had just pole vaulted right over it.
And get this wasn't just some secret spy report. Nope. In the last-ditch negotiation talks, Iranian officials were apparently bragging about it. They claimed they had 460 kilograms of highly enriched uranium and could get it to weapons grade in about a week. So for Washington and its allies, this wasn't some abstract threat anymore. It was real, and it was immediate.
Okay, so the nuclear clock was ticking down, for sure. But that wasn't the only thing going on. The second major reason this all happened was the absolutely stunning collapse of Iran's power in the region.
For years, Iran played a very smart game. They had a strategy they called forward defense. Basically, they used this network of proxy forces, you've heard of them, groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, as a kind of shield. The whole point was to project power and cause trouble for their enemies, making it too risky for anyone to attack Iran directly. Keep the fight over there, not here. But then, between 2023 and 2025, that entire shield just fell apart. It was like dominoes. First, Hamas got functionally dismantled after the 2023 war in Gaza. Next, Hezbollah, they were the crown jewel of Iran's network, had its leadership systematically taken out. You could just watch Iran's main deterrent crumbling, piece by piece. And the final nail in the coffin? The collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. That was a huge deal. It completely severed the land bridge Iran needed to ship weapons and supplies to its remaining allies. Now, if you're a military strategist in the U.S. or Israel, you're not just seeing a vulnerability. You're seeing a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Suddenly, Iran looked more alone and exposed than it had in decades.
So you've got this perfect storm brewing, right? On one hand, Iran's nuclear program is going into overdrive. On the other, its entire regional defense system is collapsing. This is what sets the stage for the final act. Let's walk through those last few weeks, right up to the point of no return.
While all this was happening on the outside, things inside Iran were falling apart. The regime was basically rotting from the inside out. In late 2025, the economy completely cratered, which led to these huge protests all over the country. The government's reaction was just brutal. They shut down the internet and then, according to reports, just massacred thousands of their own people. It got so intense that President Trump actually went public, telling the protesters that help is on its way. That was a massive signal that the U.S. position had changed.
And that help, well, it arrived in the form of a massive military machine. In just a few weeks in early 2026, the U.S. moved more firepower into the Middle East than it had since the Iraq War back in '03. We're talking 2 entire carrier strike groups. We're talking the most advanced fighter jets, the F-22s and F-15s, a whole fleet of refueling planes to support them. And then the final giveaway, they evacuated key personnel from the U.S. Navy headquarters in Bahrain. The board was set. All the pieces were in position.
There was one last, desperate attempt at diplomacy, with Oman playing the middleman. But honestly, it just showed how far apart everyone was. The U.S. came in asking for everything. Stop all enrichment, give up your stockpile, get rid of your missiles, and cut off your proxies. Iran's position? They basically said the only thing we'll talk about is our right to enrich uranium. The two sides weren't even on the same planet. The gap was just too big to bridge.
So when the attack finally came, it started not just with an explosion, but with a clever bit of espionage. According to reports, a joint U.S.-Israeli deception operation tricked Iran's entire top leadership. They made them feel safe, made them believe an attack wasn't coming right away. And because of that, they all gathered in one place. We're talking everyone, even the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And just like that, they became one single, incredibly valuable target for the very first strikes of the war.
So what happened on February 28, 2026? It was more than just the start of a war. It was the complete demolition of the political and military landscape that had shaped the Middle East for almost 50 years. That old order is just gone, and it leaves us all with a massive and pretty unsettling question. What on earth is going to replace it?